Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson here today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Barrier O'Connor.
The co-host and conspiracy theorist of the amazing A Free Solution. I'm here, man. I'm always,
You're
I
here.
love it.
You're providing the interesting and off the wall topics that the mainstream media isn't covering.
That's
And
the,
then
the
I
ones
can
we're
take
covering
the
today.
head
A
of it.
lot of them, they're kind of out there already. They're kind of talking about them.
Yeah.
A little bit.
That's all right. We got our own take on it. We're gonna make sense of it, maybe. I don't know.
Are we?
Or shrug at it like collectively with you, the audience.
Yeah. With us, the cool kids, wondering when the rest of the world is going to catch up with us. Let's put it that way. Like literally, that's where we're at. Like when is the rest of the world going to catch up with Kevin and Tim and people like Shelly and people like Patty and people like Sam? When are they going to catch up with us? Like the world is filled with idiots, Kevin. I'm not going to lie. Filled.
Just think of
Right
that
to the
Homer
brim.
Simpson meme. Everyone is stupid except for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I'm not that sure about me. Wait, no, that's not how that goes. Everyone's stupid except for me and you and Kevin. I'll be honest, sometimes,
Fair enough. And we know I'm not a real libertarian. I'm sure.
Neither one of us is, Bud.
No,
sometimes we're both too pragmatic. Sometimes, like, I don't know who is a real libertarian, but maybe at the after show we'll do some chit chatting about what the Libertarian Party's up to. It's kind of epic.
Oh goodness, yes. You're talking about the conservatorship or whatever it is.
No conservatorship.
Yeah.
We need some.
We'll talk about that.
It's hilarious. I don't know. I'm sure. I have a feeling that you're not enjoying it as much as I am.
We'll talk about it. Maybe we'll get to it at the end of the show. We'll talk about
Okay. All right. All right. Cool
stuff. But anyway, the headline topic is governors who don't respect constitutional rights, which honestly is like an evergreen headline. But
we can go two different directions in one segment with it, right? Quickly.
Yeah, it might go into two segments too. Like it might bleed into the second segment because we got a couple different topics to talk about. New York State topics, and maybe the governor of New Mexico as well.
What a class act she is, bro. She's awesome.
She's awesome. You heard it here, folks. Tim, big fan of the governor of New Mexico.
No.
I mean, I'm gonna. You're gonna talk about how great the governor of New Mexico is. I'm gonna talk about how David Hogg is right.
It's gonna be a weird day, bro.
It's gonna be a weird day.
It's gonna be a weird day. It's gonna be a weird day, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So
it hurts to hear that. It had to hurt to say it, and yet, when we get to the story, on some level, it's true.
Yeah. So we'll get to all that, some school topics, and maybe we'll get to the weird stuff at the end, as we often do.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
There's weird news out there, and
we
found something to talk about. Yeah,
we found some.
We sure did. All right, so I think we're gonna go in at 4 minutes, and we're gonna kick off the radio show, folks. Again, if you're listening online, then leave your comments. Appreciate you here. If you're lucky enough to be with the live show, you get to actually participate. So appreciate y'all. Okay, we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back in. We're gonna go in 5, 4, 2.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson here today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Barrier O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and what an exciting day. We have governors all over the country violating our constitutional rights with executive actions.
Evergreen topic, Tim. Evergreen topic.
It just goes on and on.
Okay, we can talk about this every week if we want to, but we have a few things that we we're going to talk about the governor in New Mexico, but we're also going to talk about Governor Hochul and some of the stuff that she's been doing as well. And appreciate all y'all joining us. If you're listening on WYSL, thanks for being here. If you're listening to the live show, the live version of this on Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, Free Solution group, or the Kevin Wilson page or Tim O'Connor page, we're all over the places.
All over.
In the podcast too. But if you listen to the live show, make sure you leave your comments. Appreciate y'all being here. So we have Shelly and John in. Thank you for being here. And if you're listening to the radio show, good, still appreciate you. But if you want to jump in, got to make sure you hit the live shows. We usually do them Tuesday or Wednesday evenings. Follow the pages to find out when we're doing it. So anyway, topic at hand. We're going to talk about the governors. We're also going to talk about some closing schools in Rochester. And then, third segment, that's where we get weird. We might talk about some aliens again, just
the Mexican alien system.
They brought in the bodies, Tim.
Right in front of the Mexican Congress, man.
They did.
I mean, I wonder if they violated their image contract with Universal Studios. I mean, we'll see. We'll get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Anyway, let's talk about what happened. You want to talk about New Mexico first? Or you want to talk about
let's get that one out of the way. I have a specific amount of rage for our own governor. But what the New Mexico governor did, and let's see if we can find her name and read a quote from her. Michelle?
Grisham.
Yeah, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Okay. Today, a judge temporarily blocked sections of our public health order, but recognized a significant problem of gun violence in the state, particularly involving the deaths of children. I refuse to be resigned to the status quo. As governor, I see the pain of families who lost their loved ones to gun violence every single day, and I will never stop fighting to prevent other families from enduring these tragedies. So, on her list, Kevin, of solutions was to constrict the right of law-abiding citizens to carry their means of personal protection outside of their home. And like dancing on the graves of children is a disgusting way to enact gun control. And it's a disgusting executive order. I hope I'm not overstepping, but
no. Well, I mean, this is something that happens, right? So because there have been in Mexico deaths from gun violence, which is a thing that a lot of places face, and she decided she wanted to do something about it. And what she decided to do is make it impossible for legal gun owners to be able to carry a weapon to defend themselves. And that's what she did. And you got to keep in mind, criminals are not going to obey this, because if you're already carrying an illegal gun, this order is not going to stop you from your gun being slightly more illegal. It's like it, and I think she even admitted that, it's probably not going to. What is this actually accomplishing? Nothing at all.
It's this massive virtue signal that offers the opportunity, if the police were to thoroughly get involved with her executive order, for hundreds of thousands of people to now all of a sudden become criminalized through the act of one tyrannical psychopath. Okay, there's a violence problem in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There's lots of reasons for it. We can get down to whatever the black markets around drugs, the inner city poverty. We can get into all of those issues and say maybe there's legitimate ways to fix it. You and I have talked about ways of fixing these problems with freedom. And this lady, you listen to her talk, she's so convinced that she's right that it's frankly amazing to me. And to again, guys, I'm with everyone that understands that when the government makes criminals out of law-abiding citizens, that is an absolute train wreck.
Yeah,
I'm passionate.
No, I understand. And again, what's so egregious about this is she recognizes that there is in her discussion about this, recognizes that there's a Second Amendment recognition of the right to self-defense, and because of incorporation, right, essentially states are obliged to abide by the same restrictions that the federal government has on violating a right. So states also cannot violate a freedom of speech or the right to bear arms, right, self-defense, or quarter people in houses. Can't do that too. I mean, everyone's waiting for that one, but she recognized that, but said like essentially because it's an emergency that she gets to suspend that she's able to circumvent those restrictions on her state's power. And actually, of all people who got this correct, who understand that the state cannot do that, David Hogg. Yes, that David Hogg. Tim is the number one fan of him for sure.
Yeah.
He said, "I support gun safety, but there's no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution." Yeah, no, he's right. He's right on that one. It's
Ted Lieu, another like rabid left-wing person, also said exactly the same thing. It was a very interesting couple of days on Twitter when she came out with this executive order. And there was nearly universal outcry, with the possible exception of the Democratic Party of the state of New Mexico, who was about the only people that I saw actual support. Some other people got involved in the virtue signal of, yes, let's make kids safer by banning guns. They were secondary to actually David frickin' Hogg, Kevin. David frickin' Hogg, bro, came out and literally said, you can't do this. This is not okay. It was an epic time. An interesting thing happened there.
Yeah, no, the weird thing. And then you have like I forget the guy's name now, the guy from the Daily Wire who's like, well, there totally are emergency exceptions to the Constitution.
Michael Knowles, Kevin.
Michael Knowles, that's the guy. I couldn't. I was trying to look for the guy's name.
Yeah, it
like did everyone switch sides? I'm like, this happens every once in a while. Everyone just switches sides on an issue, and then we're all expected to like be normal about it. I was like, it's one of those times that happened.
He was trying to prop up the whole, hey, conservatives, this is why we've got to vote Republican, or we're going to end up with a lot more of this kind of concept. He certainly kind of tried to backtrack, and it certainly was a controversial take, and I thought it was attention-seeking, but I certainly took advantage of, explaining to my friends that sometimes conservatives get sideways so fast that it's embarrassing, okay? Like when you've got a conservative stalwart, alleged purported conservative stalwart like Michael Knowles, who talks on the Daily Wire practically every day, coming out and saying, yes, well, governors can do executive orders. And it's like, where were you during COVID? Like, did you miss governors taking their executive powers from the legislature and screwing everything up? Like, did you miss that? Like, why would you even entertain the notion that a governor has a right to usurp the Constitution? Why would you even entertain it? It wasn't even funny. Like, and he got universally.
He got roasted.
It was great.
Yeah, they got roasted for that. No, it's such a wild thing. And by the way, like this happened just like an hour ago. I found it when I was trying to like make sure I pronounced the governor's name correctly. Is that a judge blocked the executive order in New Mexico? Federal judge blocked it. Said that.
Right. And Governor Virtue Signal came out and said, well, the governor recognizes that guns are a real problem, but they temporarily blocked my emergency order. And it's like, I don't think that's what happened. Basically, Reuters is kind of like taking a strong stance saying that your executive order got blocked. And when I kind of read down through the article, there was no other case to be made other than she got blocked. Period.
Showing duty action. And again, this is a Democrat. This is a Joe Biden appointed judge. It wasn't
that's right.
dyed-in-the-wool like Trump Republican judge that people like to make accusations about. Like, no, this is a Joe Biden appointed judge. Again, every once in a while, there's something so like absolutely egregious that like everyone who like respects the rule of law in some way is like, nope, that's too far. I know, even if like they're because again, there's some people like David over there who's I want there to be fewer guns on the street, but even this a little bit too far. You can't just decree something.
Yeah, and Kevin, you know what? Everybody can thank the NRA for boisterously. Oh wait, no, it wasn't the NRA. Sorry, guys. Like, look. If you've listened to me and Kevin for a while, you know that we're not the hugest fans of the NRA because what they've become is an equivocator over gun rights. And so the National Association for Gun Rights, led the way filing for this overturning of her executive order. And I just want everyone to know that there are gun clubs, gun organizations that are more pro two-way than the NRA. And here's one now. You know what I mean? Like they actually took it to her.
Yep. No, and exactly. National Association for Gun Rights was the ones who did this, and I don't know. I still haven't forgiven the NRA for not jumping in on the Philando Castile thing, or I mean, a bunch of other stuff too.
Sure, they had a bunch of times where they could have had a real positive impact, and look, certainly the allegations against them in New York State that they have to answer for about just basically being a corrupted kind of organization and a lobbying agency where they're kind of like just taking money and putting it in their pockets. That needs to be discussed more. I think that agencies, like we talked about it last week, you know, agencies, these advocacy agencies turn into just lobbying firms. They just turn into for-profit money-making machines. And I think that, guys, and this is with all due respect to the people that have invested in the NRA, I think that they're not what you think they are, and they're not what you want them to be. Period.
Right.
You know, I think that's a fair statement.
No, that's fair. You know, you evaluate, are they fighting for your values in the way that you want them to do that? And you know, and I know they do other stuff. They do the gun safety stuff, like that's good. They do the courses, that can be good. But you know, like, cool, do that. Like, let's leave the advocacy to someone who's actually gonna like fight consistently for this stuff. But all right, so I think we mostly got this.
We did, man.
Yeah.
We've got our own problems in New York State, though. We have our own executive authoritarian here in New York. And certainly she managed to ram through a very uncomfortable, guess what, Kevin? If you want to buy ammunition, guess what? It's background check time. And guess what? It's not just background check time. It's pay for your own background check every single time you buy ammunition. There used to be a carve out for antique military weapons or antique weapons that you didn't need a background check for them. Yeah. Not anymore. Not in New York. So all sorts of things. Your normal activities up till just today, where you could trade a gun with a friend, and especially if you were into antique military collectibles, that's done now. You now have to report every transaction to the state police, or you're going to be thrown in jail. You're going to be literally thrown in a cage. Okay. And then you got to pay $9 each time you do it for a background check on both of you. And
$250 every time you buy ammunition. So
so you're going to have to buy massive amounts of ammunition to save that on that $250 to spread it out over.
Good. Just make everyone buy in bulk. That solved it. No, wait. Don't give me any ideas. They're gonna like limit the number you can buy at once. They probably already have.
And this little bit of legislation survived a challenge, or at least has been granted an injunction by Sotomayor. And when she does liberal things and comes down in favor of individual rights, I like her. But when she backs up an executive or an executive action and a legislative action that to me is clearly unconstitutional and again criminalizes law-abiding citizens or threatens to criminalize law-abiding citizens. I got to try to pick my words carefully because whatever. When these things happen and she grants an injunction so that this bill can go into effect and be enacted, then I got a problem with her. I think it's politicized. Like there's whatever. I don't like it.
So she was the one who had the statement on that, and I can share an article for those who listen online. If you listen on WSL, appreciate you, but occasionally I drop articles in the comments. That's why you go and check out the show on social medias, because we add context to stuff. Usually we're referencing different things. We try to cite, like when we're getting some stuff, whether it's local news or AP or like direct source if we can.
That's even we were able to share more information about the event you had last week. We welcome the participation. We enjoy the participation, and we want more people to participate in the live show. And we love WSL for carrying us through, right? Like we absolutely appreciate it. We appreciate you guys. We'd like to talk to you guys more often because I still remember days of getting phone calls and stuff like that when we were doing the lunchtime.
We do miss WSL phone calls.
We do, man. Like honestly, we do. Some of them were hilarious. like the debates with Keith. I miss Keith. Like Keith is a thoughtful guy and certainly a great example of the authoritarian mindset that pervades the conservative party occasionally, right? Like, and I want to talk to him because I know he's smart enough to get the things that we're talking about. And you know, like I that's what I want to have happen, right? So that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. But anyway, so we got a couple minutes left on more New York State stuff.
But wait, there's more, guys. And
guys.
This may carry over into the next segment, but let me set it up. Back in 2020 and 2021, there was this push for a legislation to set up a law surrounding interning or quarantining sick people, and it was Bill A0416. You guys can find the text of it, and basically it set this whole program up about how they could quarantine people if they were sick. They had to provide receipts. They had to provide a date of release. They had to provide certain conditions to the individual. That our legislative, body didn't feel the need to pass that bill. But subsequently, sometime in 2022, Governor Hochul took it upon herself to enact an executive order that was actually even more draconian than what A0416 would have been. And so she wrote an executive order saying that the state has the power to quarantine anyone at any time for any reason, okay? Like any illness type reason. And there's no specificity about whether it's a mental illness. It's a very broadly written executive order that should be sending chills down all of our spines. And it's being challenged in the Supreme Court like this week.
Kills me. I posted the link to the rule, but it cut it into two segments. Okay. But there's a PDF if you want to read the actual rule. And so, like looking into this again, what it is supposed to do, right? Like what the spin from like the executive branch of New York State, right? Because this comes from like the public health commissioners and Governor Hochul, is that it's supposed to just clarify the ways in which public health law applies to the specific situations of like COVID, right? Like that's what they kind of say it does, right? And to like allow them to carry out the authority that they already have within existing public health law. That's what they say. A judge did not agree with this, right? Like again, it's why it's being appealed right now. It went to the New York State Supreme Court, and it's being appealed. And I think it's going to be, it's not the Supreme Court like the national Supreme Court. It's going to stay within the state because it is a state of New York jurisdiction, as I understood it. But
I think you're right. I apologize. I get a little bit, I get a little bit human sometimes, so I overstated it. But yes, it is a New York State issue. It should be resolved in New York State. I do believe if it doesn't resolve itself, it can be then carried forward to the
right. Yeah, there might be other opportunities if like there's standing in relation to like federal law, because most of what's being chatted is like because the executive. Oh, we're out of time. Wait, guys, you're just gonna have to wait till the next segment. Stay listening here on WYSL. We're going to be back with more on A Free Solution in just a minute. Talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah, the link got chopped.
Vince, I know I broke the link. I'm sorry. I reposted it, guys. So hopefully that you got an entire link there. I wanted to give context to what it was, and I put too many characters.
And sometimes when I'm giving context and breaking down a story, I exaggerate or perhaps occasionally miss a detail or two.
Well, no, it's all good, But again, I in theory, I went to like a deep dive in this because what you sent me like this Brownstone Institute article, and like they're a little hit or miss for me. Like, because sometimes they're good, sometimes they're a bit sloppy with stuff. So like I want to look, okay, what does this actually say, right? Was public health law, whatever 2120 say? because we'll talk about that a little bit. What does the executive order say, and how is it different? Because like it is different in a substantial way. Like it matters, right? Like I kind of gave the spin there, but it is different in a substantial way that like is concerning. And it's so easy for politicians and like technocrats to like gloss over like it's fine. We already have this authority. We're just clarifying the authority. Everything's fine.
Right.
It's not like they're the way they're structuring the authority that they're giving themselves can be dangerous. Even though the Brownstones also defended Typhoid Mary, and I don't know, I could get on board with that.
There we go. Got a little back feed there. I was trying to find your link myself for what you posted, but I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, you did. Don't worry. Now, if you're clicking on something, it didn't come through. If any noise came through. Sometimes do that. It drives me nuts. If I click on an article, like this is side rant, and I'm sure folks listening can agree with this. I do not want your article to start automatically playing a video when I open it up. It drives me nuts. Like just stop. Why would I want that at all? No, just like let me choose to like click on the video, or at least choose to turn the sound on.
Yeah. Give me a second to respond. Yeah, no, I get it for sure.
All right, but we'll go back in at 27 minutes.
All righty.
So 30 seconds. I'm gonna call this out. And
what's that?
Didn't leave myself enough time to get a new beer.
Oh.
some pumpkin spice beer.
Oh no! Oh my God, no!
Pumpkin ale. It's fine.
Pumpkin ale. Hopefully, it's from a local brewery.
Saranac.
All right, that's close enough. It's New York State.
Yeah. All right. Go back in 5 seconds.
Okay.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson yesterday, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
Still here, Kevin. Still feeling like we have governors running amok all over the country. And as we were talking about before the break, New York State's own Governor Kathy Hochul is in the crossfire.
Yeah, and in this case, again, this is Rule 2.13 is the rule. I posted a link to it. Now working on our social media channels. If you're listening at WYSL, appreciate being here. Just go back and check that link if you want to see what it is. I found it, so you didn't have to. And so what the rule is, like, and like I talked about how like the governor and like technocrats generally, like, we'll kind of do this hand wavy thing where they're like, no, it's just this is the power we have. We're just clarifying the rules, and they have a whole justification statement about how like they said to clarify it like in circumstances of COVID. But a couple of like things that seem substantial about like this specific rule change are, one is that they expanded the circumstances of which a quarantine is allowed to be issued, right? Because it's already state law. Like state law, like you can be quarantined, right? Like that's a fact. Again, look at public health law 2120. Like you can be quarantined, but they list the specific circumstances in which you could be quarantined. Basically, you have to go to a magistrate and you have to say, like, we think this person should be quarantined, and you have like an opportunity to kind of like defend yourself before that quarantine happens. And then if the local public health commissioner still agrees, yes, this person is, they use the term like a menace. Or something like that. Basically, if they're worried you're going to get a bunch of people sick, and talk about like a Typhoid Mary situation, which
they locked her up for 23 years under
she kept killing people.
Oh no, man!
That's why they did it. Like she kept being like, no, it's fine, but she was like a asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever, and then kept going back and like cooking for people. So they stuck her on an island because she just kept going back, and then people kept dying. But anyway, but that people like her are the reason this law exists, right? That's a pretty extreme case, but like if you do have a communicable disease, like the government like the legislature passed a law and says like they can lock you up. but this again expands that, right? Like this goes beyond what the state legislature allows for like a specific public health issue, and expand to circumstances of COVID in which the government, all the way in 2022, is the thing that like concerns me. Like if this happened in 2020, it would still be bad and need to be like drawn back. But this is 2022. But they're trying to deal with like asymptomatic carriers of COVID, and saying that like if you are suspected of having COVID, you could be, in theory, forcibly quarantined either in your home or in a facility, even if you're showing no outward symptoms. It's just that they have to make a case. The public health commissioner, or the public health officials get to decide, not the magistrate in this case, but the public health officials get to decide if you do that, and then carry out that order without an opportunity to defend yourself and to like make a counter argument that you are not someone who is going to be a public health danger, right? So that's where this goes a step further. And as we said in the previous segment, a judge said, nope. The public health law before, like you have the taking away someone's liberty is a serious thing, and we can't just nonchalantly leave that up to like like a public health official. Like that's not something that is not to be allowed to do. So that was a case that happened last year. They shut it down, but the state is appealing this, and it would like to very much have this rule just in case.
Yeah, just in case. And I think that now is probably the time to talk about the absolute success of granting. And look, I always want to remind people that when it came to granting Governor Kathy Hochul executive privileges associated with a pandemic, that it was a nearly unanimous vote in the New York State Congress. And I was livid. There was one Republican that spoke out against it and posted missives all over Facebook. And he must have got a memo from the GOP, because he immediately, within 10 hours, took them all down and wouldn't talk about it anymore, other than ranting about Governor Cuomo. But the fact remains is that the legislators had an obligation to represent us, which they willingly ceded to Andrew Cuomo at the time. And I think that when we see these executive orders, and we see even what the governor did in New Mexico, and we're seeing what Kathy Hochul's trying to do here, even though she's being challenged, that the issue of making people afraid and issuing executive orders is a very, very successful strategy. And we need to be able to push back on it somehow.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And again, two things about that. One, it's like people are freaked out in the beginning of COVID, and they're just like, we can't possibly meet together. It's not safe to meet together. We can't make decisions quickly, which is true. So we're going to cede some of our authority to an executive who can carry out decisions quickly, and they ceded a lot. Yet some of the mistakes were giving that too much authority and not making clear like sunset provisions in that authority. Like that's, to me, that's kind of the better way to do it. Is like, okay, there are situations where I get that makes sense, because like it might be unsafe or imprudent for a legislature to go together, debate, and make a decision when something might need to be addressed quickly. Okay, fair enough. Set a date and then have it sunset automatically. You need to go in and renew that if they need to do that. Okay, give them 30 days, whatever.
Yeah, look, they could have created a provision for online meetings where they could revisit the sunset provision or renew that executive order. And believe me, had they done that, it would not have lasted as long as it did.
Which eventually they did. Eventually they're like, no, like we can't just keep allowing you to continue declaring emergencies over and over again. It doesn't work for us. And they did. Like eventually the legislature, after exhausting all the other possibilities, did the right thing.
Yeah, but it took forever, Kevin, right? Yeah. Like, and they should have been responsible enough. That's what we were paying them for. Like it should have been included. They should have been smart enough and less in love with authority and less afraid, or more recognizing of their responsibilities to their constituents, to have put those sunset provisions in. And instead they did it in the inverse. They were like, promised to meet again about the executive order, but the executive order was going to continue
Right.
unless they retracted it versus reauthorizing the executive order. And
Yeah.
it was a huge difference. It amounted to a huge difference for small businesses. It amounted to huge differences for schools, and it allowed petty bureaucrats to make lots of decisions that they probably would have been better served had they been braver. And again, I'm like referring to the local kind of canceling of all school sports for that whole year
Sure.
when other places in New York State had more effective local leadership and had real sports programs. And it just, so, those frustrations
like
remain with me.
the thing that I always keep in mind is like public health officials, like their job is to get as much as possible, like very few deaths from like communicable diseases and other public health concerns, right? Like that is like what they have been charged with. That is their life. They're going to do. They're going to see things from a different perspective. And the reason why you don't give them unlimited power and the way a republic is supposed to work is that we're supposed to like go to a representative and say, okay, yes, that is one of our interests is public health and safety and like the spread of disease, but also we have all these other competing interests, and we are charging you with weighing the totality of those interests, the economy, the personal and mental health, like all the other stuff, and then making a better decision given new and changing circumstances, right? Like that's how a republic is supposed to work. And you're not supposed to feed all that power to bureaucrats who have like a very specific mission and aren't always, if not charged with like taking those other things into consideration, but at least like not considering that. And that's, again, that's a dangerous road to go down. And that bureaucracy, when we cede all that legislative power to them, which we do at goodness every single level of government, like the rulemaking thing that they did here, that is something that happens constantly on the federal level. Like the EPA is doing this all the time.
Oh, good point. Yeah. This is a good time to talk about that kind of petty bureaucrats writing legislation that they have the power to enforce with fines and imprisonment. Like that, guys, is a violation of the Constitution. Like that is not supposed to happen. There's a drive to push back on some of it. You hear Vivek Ramaswamy talking about it. You heard Ron DeSantis point his finger at it, but not talk about it to the extent that Vivek has. This regulatory capture, this regulatory agencies that have now been empowered by legislative incompetence is embarrassing. It's wrong. It's just wrong. It's a moral injustice, and more people don't understand it. Again, how do we get the cool people to catch up with me and you, and obviously the people that join our show, and obviously this group of libertarians that understand what we're saying. And guys, I think that like when I say this is an area where conservatives seem to get this notion of regulatory capture, even though guys like Michael Knowles fail on other issues, it's how do we wake them up more though? How do we get people to understand it?
So that's the frustrating bit. Like libertarians, a bunch of conservatives, even like the kind of neoliberals, like the kind of centrist, like liberal Democrats, like they get it too. They talk about this stuff. I'm like, yeah, no, it's pretty messed up. Like look at all these like bad regulations we have. I swear to you, like I saw like I've seen several long tweet threads about like eliminating environmental review from the federal side just because it makes it so difficult to build stuff that we get stagnant and people get frustrated, and like you can't do green energy if like no one can build like a solar farm, right?
It's just amazing. I'm still looking across the lake from me, Kevin. I'm still looking at a 7-acre development that was basically pre-sold, that nothing has gotten built because the local bureaucracy stood in their way, and they made them do all sorts of extra permitting, and then they were short a quarter of an acre to have exactly the right amount of land, so that drew it out. Then the laws in New York State changed, and all of a sudden, because they're somewhat near a lake, what they had to do with their sewage became ridiculously prohibitive, and so now we have a hotel that's falling into the ground and becoming overrun with vermin, like not being used. They were going to put a really nice, 11 home townhouse on 11 townhouses. So 22 residences on 7 acres. It would have been beautiful. It were the ideal spot for it. And we fought it tooth and nail. And it's a ridiculous concept that we can't have 11 or 22 more homes in this area that were fully subscribed to before the guy started building. It's just like, how did we get here? And it's because of these crazy regulations. It's because of seekers and long form seekers and engineering reports and people thinking that development is bad and people thinking that landlords are bad and people thinking that developers making money is bad. Yet they'll turn to their local nonprofit where the guy's making $400,000 a year and they'll open their wallets and they won't care. Like they don't get it. They're disconnected from reality. How's that?
Yeah.
That was an epic kind of rant right there.
And again, like Tim, you're saying something that I think people who pay attention to this stuff will start seeing it. Like if you're not paying attention to this type of thing, like you can see it all because like the exact same things are going on in Rochester. It's wild. We only got like a minute and a half left. But I want to quickly call out Shelly's comment on YouTube here. Laws should be tested once a year to see if they're still applicable. Like my like radical theory is that like almost every law should probably have a sunset provision automatically. Like, we've just got to like renew it, right?
Constitutional jubilee, baby. Bring it all back to nothing and start again. Do your jobs.
I don't know that I'm like full constitution, but I think like most federal laws, like we should have to be like, do we really need, you know, the Department of Education? Like if we do, then give it a thumbs up. Like give it a thumbs up. Okay, great. We'll have it, right? But like you've got to say like yes to that like every few years, or like any like set of like big regulatory. Does Obamacare still work? Okay, yes or no? Like a lot of stuff should be subject to like yes or no things on a regular basis. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but Shelly, I generally agree with you. You know,
I gave a big thumbs down to the visually, and I want the radio audience to understand that when you said should we renew the Department of Education, I gave a big thumbs down. I just think it's an absolute train wreck.
There you go. Yeah, good radio catch there, Tim.
Yep, absolutely. I want people to know out there to know we could end the Department of Education and everything would be fine. We wouldn't miss it.
No, 100%. All right, so we have to head to break now for our WYSL audience. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. No, and Vince here on YouTube's like, look up the story of Marco Island, Florida. This corporation pre-sold lots. Many of them made canals, and after they had done 50% of the dredging, the EPA stepped in and shut it down. And this is like, it's a neoliberal Twitter. Like, so like you're thinking like kind of Democrats who sometimes sound like libertarians on some things. Like that's how I would describe those folks. Like, a lot of them are on a tear about like environmental review laws. I mean, we talked about this with who's the senator? Was it the senator from West Virginia who talked about like repealing the environmental review stuff?
Manchin?
What's his name? I think it was Manchin. Yeah. So he talked about doing that as part of like the Inflation Reduction Act. I think is what he was trying to tie that to, but it didn't work out. But like that almost happened. But like that set of laws is basically why like it's difficult and extremely expensive to build stuff. Even stuff like, again, not they always necessarily agree with it, but like why is it so expensive to build like high speed rail? It's a lot of times it's caught up in like things like environmental reviews or like a new subway line, right? Like somewhere in New York City, it took them tens of millions of dollars more than it does like anywhere else in the world, in part because of environmental review. Or in it was Minneapolis, environmental review laws, because the zoning reform got reviewed because they said that there could be a negative impact on the environment from having taller buildings and having shade and more people walking around. My goodness, we're going to have shade in big buildings and people walking around in a city neighborhood. That could be bad for the environment. Are you kidding me? It's absolutely nuts.
It's gobsmackingly like we have overregulated ourselves into inactivity, right? Like that's near inactivity, let's say, but it's still we're teetering on this precipice that if we don't come up with interesting changes and some deregulation, I don't know how we're going to survive like as a vibrant economy. And I still think we are a vibrant economy. I think that I'm very annoyed with Joe Biden's lies about inflation. I'm very, very annoyed with the Nobel Peace Prize winning Paul Krugman backing Joe Biden's lies. And I'm like, okay, but still, we still have a pretty awesome economy. We're still associated with a great group of people. America is still a great country. All of those things are all true, but we are not. We're kind of destroying the concept of the middle class on some level, like in my opinion, with all this hyper regulation and this hyper paranoia about climate change. And it sounds like a religion to me. I'm going to be honest. And so whatever, we'll keep talking. Maybe people will listen.
Yeah, I understand. But then a couple comments been saying, right, the environmental impact reports how the EPA gets their hands on everything these days. Got a lot of short-sighted federal law that gets stretched to their breaking point. Again, some laws can have good intentions, and like,
yeah,
I think this is one of those ones where like, oh, like of course we should review like how big projects will impact the environment. That seems great. No, it's
not what the end result is, right? It just
no,
is.
but yeah, how it ends up actually working is not the same. And
Sure.
And then where's the other? Sam on YouTube says, love the idea of putting in sunset clauses for most laws. Maybe we can ask politicians that question in primaries. Yeah, good plan, man. John says he heard your thumbs down, but he had a different digit hoisted.
I'm with you. We wouldn't miss it, man. We'd still have to pay off its obligations, but we wouldn't miss the Department of Education. People would just agree easier. We have a politicized, bureaucratized nonsense system there. Blah. Stop it.
It should, Tim. That should be a nonprofit. I know you're on a tear against nonprofits, but the Department of Education should be a nonprofit that talks about good educational like curriculum development and pedagogy, and they can do their own thing and collect donations and have a blast.
Yeah.
Just not have like the same enforcement power that they have.
Yeah, my brain is stuck on the fact that I'm against nonprofits, and actually, on some level, you're right, because on some level, shrewd people who want to make a lot of money get involved in the nonprofit game. That does, like you're saying about laws, that does not mean that the intentions of nonprofits are horrible, nor does it mean that they couldn't have a useful, and they do have a useful, presence in society. There's a couple different issues there about, how people have conflated them with being totally virtuous when in fact they are not always totally virtuous, that they are a money-making scheme for people who have figured out a scam. And so, yeah.
Right. Well, I'll say this about nonprofits. Like, just something people do get confused about nonprofits, that they necessarily have to be, like, charitable in that you can't make money from them. Because, again, nonprofits can sell stuff. They can't, like, give money away to shareholders. Like, that's their whole thing is just a structure of corporation in which you can't give money to like a board or shareholders or anything like that. But you can have employee salaries, including very high employee salaries, to carry out like the dedicated mission of your organization managed by a volunteer board. And it can be good or bad. It's just a structure. And it could be a good structure if you want to pay less in taxes and be able to solicit gifts to fulfill a good mission. Private nonprofit, we have a nonprofit like ad that runs on our breaks.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's a nonprofit that counts, right? Especially on a local level. I get it. And look, again, here's the conundrum, right? Not for profits. If the CEO sells his idea to people that will show up to work for less money because they think they're doing something virtuous, the CEO drives by, waves at the staff while they're hanging out at the bus stop. And so that sums up, that encapsulates some of my frustration with it.
Yeah.
The virtue signal, Kevin.
No, okay. That can definitely be a thing. All right. But we should eventually go back. But
your tool shed thing is a great not-for-profit. It's wonderful. Keep at it.
Yeah. That's fun stuff.
And I hope you make a lot of money someday.
Yeah. I ain't going to make nothing. I'm a volunteer board member.
Yeah, there you go. And there are nonprofits that operate like that. And that was the goal of them,
Yeah. So A lot still do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Most even really, like, to
yeah,
be fair.
but yeah, no, there's some out there that are less great. But I'll
Yeah.
acknowledge that, right? All right, we're gonna go back in about 5 seconds.
All right.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I think you want to talk about a little bit of local Rochester news again, which I think is great to bring to this show.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a show that airs on WYSL based in Avon, New York, just a little south of Rochester. I live in Rochester, and I know there's lots of stuff going on in the region. We talk a lot of state issues. I'm going to talk about city, specifically the city school district, which is going through another major reorganization. They're proposing closing quite a few schools around the city. Let's see, 6 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 2 high schools, and including closing down several buildings. Yeah, like, and the reason why, and this is really what I want to talk about is the reason why is that they're projecting that they're going to see a continued decrease in enrollment over the next year. They're also having a lot of trouble filling like staff positions and stuff, but a lot of it's just like they think that there's going to be fewer people enrolled in schools, and it's not just a city of Rochester issue. Again, this is the broadening the context, by the way. It's not just a city of Rochester issue. This is an issue at a lot of school districts, especially the struggling like big city school districts across New York State and across the country, is that people are exiting the public school system. This is in part a consequence of COVID, but it's continuing a longer trend. Is that a lot of people are just like, nope, this doesn't work for me anymore, and like the structure of like sometimes they'll move to a suburb or something, right? Find a better school. I mean, it's an expensive way to do that, but lots of folks do that.
Sure.
But what a lot of people are doing is like, no, I don't want to leave. I'm just going to go pay for a homeschool program, or I'm going to like see charter school options, which are they're their own thing, or private school or whatever, right? Like, so a lot of people are leaving the public school systems because they're no longer meeting the needs and responding effectively to the needs of today's students and parents.
There's an incredibly high level of frustration. Again, especially COVID and post-COVID, we saw what these unions can be made of. We saw a politicized environment that was fear-based, and we saw them just basically steal one of the things that we actually all bought into, that socializing our kids at school was something that they needed to learn, and that was a valuable skill. They
Right.
just took that away, and now when we see politicized pushes, we see a certain. First of all, the other thing, let's be clear, is that the U.S. school system is not increasing its provenance in the world. It's not getting better against other school systems. Like, in New York being the highest paid like per student school system, the results are matching Kentucky. California, number 2 in expenditure per student, ranks in the bottom, like lower, like 47th, 48th, something like that in the country for school student performance. And so money is not simply the answer. It's like,
No.
we've
Well, I mean,
got
like that's always the answer. Like, that's always like how districts and teachers unions say you can solve the problem. Oh, just we're underfunded. We don't get enough money. Like, no, that is bonkers. Like, you look at the numbers that the city of Rochester is pulling in, and they're like, oh, they're higher needs. No, like, you should be able to do something effective with, was it like $42,000? I think I might even be old now. Like,
Yeah,
just tens of thousands of dollars per each student, and people are still want to leave. Again, and I looked up the stat. Like, overall, again, not just Rochester, but there's going to be a 5% decrease in public school enrollment probably by 2030. That's what they're projecting. So despite a growing population, 5% fewer students, total number,
what an
over the
amazing,
years.
yeah, what an amazing indictment of the school system in Rochester. I've got to be honest. Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and then again, this isn't just Rochester. That's the nationwide statistic. So it's not just a Rochester thing, but Rochester specifically, they're seeing the writing on the wall and like, oh, we have too many schools now. And again, there's issues with people like leaving Rochester too. There's some population decline, but it's more than that. It is people now understand that there are alternatives, and they go and seek those out, right? And that's again, this is how education should work. I mean, yeah, like the backpack funding things that they're doing out in like Arizona, they're trying to do in several other states where basically you're able to choose your educational opportunity and the funding follows you rather than in the city of Rochester. All those students who leave, like if there's still families living in Rochester, the district's still going to get the money for them. Like that's what it's going to be. So like,
I know.
pay, yeah, same amount of money for I mean like there's still like attendance things like because some of it comes from the state, but like in a lot of districts, like you still kind of they still get the money.
What a wild concept, right? Like they have no accountability if that's the situation, right? Like they if they don't lose
Right,
funding
yeah,
for not having students just because a student resides in that neighborhood, how do we solve them? How do we fix
yeah,
that?
right. Like there's no like market mechanism to like offer the correction. Like if there's no like cost to driving students away, then why improve? And I know like you'll say why improve, but of course like teachers care about like the education of the students. Yeah, right, I know, but like the really like when the rubber hits the road, like we need to make hard improvements or we're going to close. Like that's what businesses have to do. Government doesn't have to respond to that same way. If they provide poor service to you, you can maybe have your voice heard in the next election, and then maybe if enough of those people get elected, they'll actually change something, which does happen. I think it happened in like San Francisco of all places, where they had like a massive overturning of the school board because they weren't responding to how parents wanted to like go back to school with COVID, and they were instead spending their time just renaming the schools, and focusing on cultural war issues. And they're like, nope, the schools stink, and students aren't in classes enough, and y'all are wasting your time on this nonsense. They organized something and started to do things a bit better. We'll see if that sticks, but like that's a really tough thing. And for like the short term, for someone like me whose kid is going to be in school like in 2 years, like in like kindergarten, well, like 2.5 years. What are my options? Okay, I can organize a campaign now to like overturn the entire Rochester City School Board and then try to like combat the New York State education system, or I can like try to find an alternative schooling solution, right? And like everyone else is.
You're like water, Kevin. You take the path of least resistance. I can't believe you wouldn't double down and exert all your effort on making the entire school system better just to serve your kid. It does.
A lot of people do. That's great. That's wonderful if you could do that. I ain't got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. It brings me around to one of the issues with schools, and our friend Sam kind of brought it up. It's like once you get in that system, once you become part of their club, it's like being in the political arena. They will hire and rehire horrible people. They will move from one school to the next, and they have they bring the same failures with them from the last school they were at to the next school that they were at. And then everybody pretends they didn't know about this person's failure until they start failing at their school. And then they're like, look what happened. And there's like recently a story in Oneonta, somebody kind of screwed up the bookkeeping and cost the whole place $400,000, and that person still has a job. And our superintendent got kicked out of a school in Albany, came here, brought his same problems here, and then eventually we got rid of him. And now, it's just like this constant shuffle and this constant club of like, I think our friend Sam brought up a guy in Rochester went to who falsified records, ends up getting a job at South Seneca, and it's just like this. They do not inspire confidence in me. The system of unaccountability does not inspire confidence in me.
No, and yeah, people get shuffled around, and that's what it is. I mean, like this isn't exclusive to schools. Like police departments will do this. It's like it's a thing everywhere. But particularly with schools, like when you're concerned about like the quality of your child's education and the safety of your children in school too. Yeah, like I don't want someone incompetent doing this.
Yeah, look, my teachers, my kids' teachers in our local school, I respect them. I care about them. There was a little bit of occasional too much, like, oh, we're here to help you with your problems kind of thing, and not enough, hey, just learn this stuff. But for the most part, pejoratively or like primarily, my teachers did a wonderful job instructing my kids, and so I thank them for that. Like
Yeah.
I know there was political pressures to do the other stuff, so whatever.
Again, I'll compare teachers to police officers. Most teachers are good; they're really great. There's a few
Yeah,
bad ones, and they need accountability, right? Like that's what it is. Like it's not a generalized statement to say like, hey, bad teachers should have accountability. Bad boards of education and administrative apparatuses should have accountability too. Like that's something that I think is a reasonable ask. It's not an indictment of the entire profession or everyone there. I know there's a lot of hardworking, wonderful people there. It's just the
absolutely.
bad
Yeah,
ones. We
thank you
want
for
that.
that. Yeah, that's a good way to
uh,
break it down.
yeah.
Kevin, if we don't get to the alien topic though, I mean, we're gonna run out of time.
All right. All right. We're gonna say we're gonna do the aliens for the radio show. Let's go ahead.
I mean,
Let's
I
do
think
the
I
aliens.
think that the WYSL audience deserves to know on some level what's going on in the alien world. And guys, like, look, there's
I
this
know.
major amount of buzz going on. The Five Eyes program, like this international coalition of government agencies are coming together, and we're finally getting to the bottom of there is life on our planet that came from other planets.
Oh
That's
yes.
that's
All right.
it's
Well,
been
we're
proven today.
talking about the alien bodies in Mexico then. Right?
Yeah, no, like I mean, literally, ET like turned up on the floor of the Mexican government today, and he's like fossilized ET, so that made me feel really bad for him because obviously, like if you watch the movie ET, you know that all it takes is love and communication with his home planet, and he gets revitalized. And this poor little ET that they
Oh,
had on the Mexican government, the floor of the Mexican government, did not receive that kind of nurture. So it's
yeah.
actually fossilized
It's
and over 1,800 years old. The guy that presented him, completely legit, like no problems with him at all. And so there it is, guys, ladies and gentlemen, the aliens are here and have been here for thousands
yeah.
of years, thousands.
No, they allegedly yes. Yeah. Again,
Allegedly.
they brought bodies, and that I said that about the ones in the U.S. Congress. Like, hey, if they're talking about the bodies, they're talking about how someone's seen non-human remains. Okay, let's see them. Let's test them. Where are the like bring in the most skeptical biologists you can possibly find and say test this, see what this is. Is this uh, non-human? Is it not something originating from Earth? What is this thing?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
until now, we haven't got the bodies. Now, I am very excited to see those bodies tested by totally objective biologists who will tell us conclusively if these little like ET bodies are mummified aliens
yeah,
are
and,
actually aliens or
yeah, and I
just
want people to know that
a
aliens are nowhere near as big or as physically imposing as
well, not
I mean,
these ones anyway.
no,
No,
not these
these are
ones.
these ones are very small. There might be some big aliens out there, but these ones they're little tiny.
These are very small. So
They're
it
like
was Jamie,
like a foot
James,
long.
yeah, James Musan, and he presented two alien bodies on the floor of the Mexican Congress. Um, and guys, I'm not kidding when I tell you if you've got to check this out. I'm referring to a USA Today article, but they look just like ET, man. And it's like, so what I'm wondering is if Steven Spielberg
Did he
perhaps
know?
got access to these things before he made that movie, so that he knew how
He,
to make an
he's
alien.
trying to send us a message. As
Yeah, yeah, he wants us to be comfortable with the way they look. Is what I'm thinking. I don't know. Like, arguably. There
yeah.
has been a lot of buzz about aliens. Certainly, there's a guy named Avi Loeb who's a cosmologist for Stanford, who's making some cases that he's found things in the ocean that under comet trails that perhaps are biologicals of non-human origin, and this guy's a
Right.
legit.
No, I mean there's some legit stuff out there. Again,
Yeah.
it would be exciting. There's a great political orphanage podcast where he talked about this. There's like a couple weird signals out there too that like got picked up. I'm like, oh, it's interesting. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's coincidence. Yeah. Either way, further alien talk and possibly a discussion on whether or not climate change is causing car theft in Rochester is going to have to wait for the podcast. If you're listening on WYSL, we're going to call it a night, folks. Appreciate y'all listening. Appreciate y'all being here. Y'all are wonderful. Tim and I are going to continue this conversation for our live audience on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a good night, folks. Take care. Yeah.
Yeah, wild. It's wild, though. Like, there's a lot of buzz and a lot of scuttlebutt, and some of it comes across as really fake to me, and guys that have been engaged in this business of presenting partial evidence of alien life. But there seems to be some pretty serious people on board, and certainly there's undebunked videos of unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is now what they're calling UFOs.
UAPs now.
UAPs.
So the podcast I listed, the one I referenced a second ago, what it talks about is how like what they keep doing with these videos is they keep looking at them and then they have engineers look at them. And the engineers are like, oh yeah, and like there's no way that could be real. It's unexplained, blah, blah, blah. But what they should be doing is having like video experts look at them.
Oh yeah.
Okay, like how could like something happen where you have like a strange effect that could be explained by a normal videographical phenomenon rather than extraterrestrial and like metallurgical phenomenon, right? And so like so they talk about things like like the parallax effects, right? Like so if you don't know what that is, it's like it when depending on the object's distance from you in relation to a background that you're looking at it can look like it's moving like really, really fast, right?
Right.
And so some videos can be explained by that. Some of it's explained by just like weird things on a camera lens, and there's all sorts of like possible explanations out there. And again, I would love to see it. I'd love to see like a video expert being like shrugging at it. I don't know what that is. An engineer shrugging at it, and then to see actual biological evidence of an alien or, a radio signal from an alien civilization.
Yeah,
be interesting.
It would be very interesting. I'm certainly skeptical, especially the more that governments get involved. I become more skeptical, or kind of like I mentioned as a joke, Fermi's paradox became more appealing once the government started saying, hey, we definitely think there's life on other planets. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's like only possible for it to be here, but also mostly it's just humorous. And I don't know. It's fun to kind of travel down those wormholes.
No, that's it. And listen, I like it. Like I listened to a book called The Sparrow, which is about like a radio telescope group and a Jesuit priest who go and visit an alien planet because they pick up a musical signal, and the government and the UN, the U.S. government can't get it together to like bring a mission together in a timely manner, but like these Jesuits just get together and like, all right, yeah, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go to space and start a mission.
Nice.
So that's a good book. It is somewhat sad, but like it's a good book, and in that process, like it's how it could happen is that's an interesting thing to play out.
Yeah, bro, I ran across a like pile of freaking weird tweets on 9/11. Like, it gets so frustrating when the world decides, hey, you know what? Everybody's kind of reflecting on something, that happened 22 years ago, 23 years ago. But what I want to do is attract attention to myself or my particular cause. So Bernie Sanders tweeted, and look, guys, this is actually where Bernie Sanders and I kind of get along, because it's like this is a whole CIA, USA kind of interfering in foreign governments kind of story. But was 9/11 the right day to celebrate Salvador Allende, that guy that destroyed Chile before Pinochet came in and destroyed it even more. I think that's a fair way of classifying two psychopaths that ruled that country.
Yeah, no, it's Linde was he was doing some incredibly undemocratic things in his own right. Was like moving Chile towards I was gonna say like unconstitutional, but that's not the right word for it. But more of an authoritarian stance where like the executive was ignoring the legislature and starting to centralize power when the actions that he was taking were no longer had the popular support of the people, right? And there's the whole Pinochet thing, which again there's a lot of messiness to that, some American involvement. Right. And him and his regime weren't nice guys. It's bad stuff.
Pinochet was an evil authoritarian who seized power in response to an evil authoritarian. It's like, and that's the authoritarian spiral, right? Like,
people can kind of latch onto him because like he was more free market oriented than his predecessor, but also like was not free market in the same way that like we are either. Because if you haven't read folks like things like Road to Serfdom, right? Like you have to understand like there's a connection between political and economic freedom. One impacts the other, right? Like you cannot have a fully free economic system with political repression because inevitably you're going to need to regulate the economy to be able to maintain that level of political repression. And same thing, if you have a fully controlled economy, there's no way you can sustain that while having political freedom, right? One reinforces the other. If you go towards authoritarianism on either side, you're inevitably going to end with no political liberty in both the economic and political and social spheres.
Yeah, so Bernie Sanders with the massive virtue signal, and Ilhan Omar also jumped on board, and then of course several thousand modern monetary theorists and communists decided to celebrate Bernie's tweet. But that I don't even think like that one was bad and a little like begging for attention because like Bernie's got socialist leanings. And yes, also I do like the fact that he pointed out that the CIA, when we talk about Salvador Allende, we can't discount the fact that the CIA was heavily involved in his overthrow. They propped up Pinochet. This has all been declassified and proven after we denied it for about 40 years. So, but a weirder one, an even weirder kind of tweet storm that went around was a number of popular people from the left decided to equate January 6th with September 11th. And to me, like, have we lost all class as a society? That's what I wanted to ask. And I'm all for like wild juxtapositions and jokes, but like, can we just let some things be kind of sacred and let people have their freaking day without politicizing it with your own personal garbage? Can that happen? Probably not.
Probably not. No.
Probably not. It's a pretty tall order, Tim.
No, that's lots of people. They don't think anything's sacred. I'm like, I don't personally engage in those jokes, that type of thing. But
right,
gosh, I'm sure you've heard like the liberty memes guys. They think nothing's sacred. And they
definitely, the liberty memes guys are.
I've seen them speak at like conventions and stuff. I think they're never too soon.
Yeah. Well, there is that premise in governing, like never let a crisis go to waste. And I think that is an unfortunate way to govern. I think that it's contributed since 9/11. We've seen an increasing authoritarianism. We've seen the Patriot Act. We've seen legit whistleblowers get jailed or have to go into hiding. And we've seen weird interpretations of the law to punish people like Ross Ulbricht. And it just and again, we get into when is enough. The best news of the week, as near as I can see it, besides that Michigan or the New Mexico governor's order getting overturned, is that Mitt Romney, ladies and gentlemen, has decided not to seek re-election. It's like that's actually good news. I'll be honest with you. I hate that guy. He's like
when he ran for president, I voted for Gary Johnson for the first time. So let's get my thoughts.
It's so bad.
I was so against him that I turned into a libertarian.
It's his fault.
I mean, it's already mostly there, but no. I mean, the only thing I didn't see much about this other than that he's spilling tea about all what the Republican Senate really thinks of Donald Trump, that type of stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, Mitt has spent a lifetime in politics and being connected to an investment fund, and his dad was governor of Massachusetts. It's just like this guy is the golden child, and he was one of the people that was literally giddy about the strategy of propping up Taiwan and propping up Ukraine so that we can have proxies. And of course, he didn't use the word proxies, but we can have their children kill their children so our children don't get killed. And it was like,
right,
you're still a blood-soaked monster, and what you're saying is absolutely morally reprehensible. It's like encouraging war on foreign soil is what's the difference? Like, war is war, man. It's death and destruction, and he's a warmonger. So at least the Senate will have one less bloodthirsty warmonger next session. That I can say that.
I don't know. You can't say. We don't know who's going to win next.
Fair point. At least we will retire.
Being a pessimist on that.
Yeah, that's
maybe there won't be. That would be great. But we'll see. I mean, weren't they the state that like 20% of their state went for Evan McMullen?
Yeah, I think so.
Seems like a real nice guy next to Trump, but look at his background.
Right.
He's got an ugly past too. Go ahead.
No, I was just like, out of the frying pan into the fire is always a possibility,
That's real. Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I was gonna switch topics a little bit and talk about the article. It's sort of an article. There's an article in the podcast about whether or not climate change was causing car thefts in Rochester. So it's this podcast is put out by the local newspaper, Democrat and Chronicle, and USA Today network. It's called City on Fire. And the whole thing is about how climate change is affecting essentially criminal crime issues in Rochester, right? But the premise, again, the headline is this climate change causing car theft. Man, what? No. Climate change is not causing everything. We talked about it before the show. This is headline ad libs, right? Where you just is X causing Y, right? And then just run with the premise.
That you start with the conclusion. Climate change is causing problems everywhere. Climate change is responsible for crime. Oh, hey, you know what's up? Car thefts in Rochester. Let's link climate change to car thefts. And it's like, bro, that's honestly, some of this journalism is one of the problems why we should abolish the Department of Education. And I'm glad when I see public schools suffering, because that is not a juxtaposition that has any business being made.
Hey, give some credit to our private colleges for the decline of journalism too.
Well, it could be. Sure.
Yeah. So, but again, what's frustrating me, it's I think a thing worth, because the thing that is meant to be looked into, right, is do hotter temperatures cause crime? Are we getting higher temperatures because of climate change? Therefore, does climate change cause crime? That's the premise that they're going in, and then finding all the evidence to do this. The thing that's frustrating to me though is specifically about how they frame that conversation is oh, it's so bad this year. The car thefts are so bad in Rochester, specifically because of climate change. It's been one of the coolest summers in years. It's we had 2 90-degree days. It's been the most mild summer. It's rainy. It's by all means a very mild, nice summer. And I'm how on earth are you still running with this premise right now? It, particularly considering like the upward trend continued through the winter months, right? Like it is not the hot weather that caused people to steal cars. There's a lot of things that could be behind it. We've spent I think several shows.
We know we've
about
concluded that it's TikTok and a technologically advanced populace in Rochester that contributed to all the car thefts.
Got a bunch of nerds here that they know how to rob the cars, which is why like Rochester is #1 in the nation for increase in car thefts at like 300%. We're like double like the next closest city.
That's it is an impressive statistic, but
yeah,
climate change, you guys suffered the same thing we suffered down here. It was relatively a cool, wet summer, thanks to Canadian forestry mismanagement. Like, let's be
exactly.
honest.
The Canadians blotted out the sun slightly, so it was a lot cooler this summer. You know, I mean the streets were filled with smoke, and no one wanted to be outside. So, you know, what are you going to do? You can't be outside committing crimes, so you get in the cars to commit the crimes, or you have filtered air. Like, really, if we want to blame someone, it's the Canadians. Although, gosh, I'm gonna tie back to climate change. Were the forest fires caused by climate change? Therefore, did the forest fires that burned down the Canadian forest and caused smoke in Rochester cause the car thefts? I tied it back, man. 6 degrees of separate. We can always tie it back to climate change.
I forgot my first rule of blaming the government. I forgot to also mention that the teenagers that stole all the cars, their lives were destroyed by the government COVID tyranny. And that is another reason why they got involved in stealing cars. They basically took a year from those kids, and those kids are paying society back. And society had it coming, but it's still the government's fault.
Yeah, it was government. I mean, like I said, you skip a step when you do headline Mad Libs. It's
sometimes
not like the climate change or racism or, you know,
the government.
Underfunding. Yours is like you shake up the jar instead of all these topics. Government. Oh my God, it's always government.
It is, Kevin. Thank you for that. It is.
I mean, usually always is. Like
but a lot of times there's a rational. So am I 100% serious? No, but did that contribute to a sense of malaise and perhaps a bit of frustration for those kids? Yeah, I'm okay with that. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
you disrupt their lives.
I mean, there's definitely causes and policy decisions that led to this thing, and you know, it's still not there. I mean, what was wild is I saw like because some of these like it's like kids driving around, right? I saw an accident like right in front of me, like no kidding, like 30 feet from me and my wife, my dog, my kid, and it was a guy who was trying to drive. He was flying down the street in what was almost certainly a stolen Kia, young guy, so he might have been a teenager, might not have been an experienced driver. Someone was trying to just turn left, and instead of going like around him, opposite the direction of the turn, they tried to go around him in the direction this guy was turning, smashed up his car, then drove all over a lawn, drove on a sidewalk, like it fairly close to my family, and then drove off.
Wow.
You know, and then the other car like chased him for a block, and then remembered he had kids in the car, and was like, "Wait, no, that's dumb. I'm not going to do that." I felt bad for that guy. Like the guy who's the driver and his family was in the car, and just like, man, I'm just trying to do laundry, and like this moron in a stolen Kia like smashed into me and didn't know how to drive, and now like, no, he's having a bad time.
Sure.
So like, it's a bad thing. It's a scary thing in Rochester, but you know. All right, is it climate change, man? That's a stretch. Listen, I'm just bothered by the premise of like the series of like going and finding like the causes. There's a couple of good ones in the series. Like if you listen to it, like in City on Fire or something like that. I like the trees one, but like some of the other ones, like man, it's such a stretch.
Yeah. No, look, it's probably entertaining, and sometimes I have to go down that wormhole with left wing with like people. I want to hear them talk, and certainly there's enough podcasts out there where you can. I feel sorry for you having listened to that, though. I want to be honest. I think that we should probably save our discussion about this new strategy that the Libertarian Party has for another day.
Yes, I mean,
this is the show that never ends.
So Cody on Facebook saying,
"No,
yeah."
I mean, a conservatorship. It's not. It's kind of hilarious. I like hilarious stuff. So anyway.
So they're getting press coverage out of it. Whether or not to be able to capitalize on that effectively, yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Arguably, everyone knows that. Everyone on some level agrees that this is not the worst idea that we've ever had, even though it's a bit grandiose and a bit perhaps. Who knows? Let's see how it plays out. Because it's real. It's a real issue that should be confronted. But
yeah.
But
yeah, we'll see how far that goes. And yeah, save the discussions for other topics for a future show. Appreciate y'all joining us today. I think we're gonna call it a night.
Yeah, we're gonna call it a night. Take care, everybody. Thanks.